Welcome to AZ-802, Practice Exam Set 10. This set covers best practices and governance across hybrid Windows Server operations. For each question, listen to the scenario, question, and choices. After the choices, you will have 3 silent seconds to lock in your answer before the reveal. Question 1. Choose the best answer. An administrator has onboarded 50 on-premises Windows Server 2022 machines to Azure Arc using the Connected Machine Agent. A colleague states that all Azure management features are now available without further configuration. Which statement accurately describes the relationship between Arc onboarding and the availability of specific management capabilities? Option A. The Connected Machine Agent serves as the control plane bridge. Each management capability, such as monitoring, patching, or policy, requires its own separate extension, policy assignment, or configuration step with independent prerequisites. Option B. Onboarding the Connected Machine Agent automatically installs and enables Azure Monitor, Update Manager, and all policy extensions on every Arc-enabled server. Option C. Once a machine appears in the Azure portal under Arc-enabled servers, all governance features become active by default and only require RBAC assignment at the subscription level. Option D. Arc onboarding replaces the need for any per-capability configuration because the agent unifies all Azure services into a single control surface. The correct answer is A. The Connected Machine Agent serves as the control plane bridge. Each management capability, such as monitoring, patching, or policy, requires its own separate extension, policy assignment, or configuration step with independent prerequisites. The Connected Machine Agent establishes the hybrid control plane, but does not automatically deploy or configure individual capabilities. Each feature, extensions, machine configuration policies, update manager schedules, must be explicitly enabled and governed. Exam clue. Look for the explicit statement that the agent is only the bridge, and each added capability retains independent prerequisites. Question 2. Choose the best answer. A resource policy assignment targets Arc-enabled Windows Server machines, but no machine configuration compliance results or guest setting evidence are yet available. Which conclusion is justified at this point? Option A. The target operating system setting is enforced because the assignment exists. Option B. The assignment establishes intended scope, but does not prove that the guest setting was evaluated or changed. Option C. The Connected Machine Agent automatically remediates every in-guest setting in the assignment. Option D. The resource-level policy compliance state is equivalent to a local operating system configuration check. The correct answer is B. The assignment establishes intended scope, but does not prove that the guest setting was evaluated or changed. A policy assignment expresses intent and scope. Evidence of in-guest evaluation or remediation must come from the applicable machine configuration components and compliance detail. Exam clue. Separate assignment, evaluation, remediation, and evidence. Question 3. Choose the best answer. A team wants to deploy the Azure Monitor Agent extension to 30 newly Arc-enabled servers. One engineer proposes using the same script that was used for Arc onboarding. Which governance consideration must be applied before the extension can be safely deployed and managed at scale? Option A. Arc onboarding automatically includes the Azure Monitor Agent, so no additional deployment step is required. Option B. Because the machines are already Arc-enabled, any extension can be pushed through the Connected Machine Agent without additional Azure RBAC or policy scoping. Option C. VM extensions on Arc-enabled servers are independent resources that require explicit RBAC permissions, supported extension version validation, and status monitoring separate from the Arc agent itself. Option D. Tags applied during Arc onboarding are sufficient to authorize and track extension deployment across all machines. The correct answer is C. VM extensions on Arc-enabled servers are independent resources that require explicit RBAC permissions, supported extension version validation, and status monitoring, separate from the Arc agent itself. Arc-enabled server VM extensions are distinct, independently governed resources. Deployment must respect RBAC, extension-specific scoping, version compatibility, and ongoing status reporting, rather than assuming inheritance from Arc onboarding. Exam clue: recognize that extensions remain independently deployable resources, even after Arc onboarding succeeds. Question 4. Choose the best answer. An organization uses tags such as environment equals production and region equals East US on 200 Arc-enabled servers. A new policy initiative is created to apply a security baseline only to production machines in the East US region. What role do the tags actually play in achieving the desired configuration outcome? Option A. The tags themselves enforce the security baseline on every tag machine without requiring any policy assignment. Option B. Once a tag is applied, Azure policy automatically remediates the guest settings on all matching Arc-enabled servers. Option C. Tags replace the need for separate policy assignments because they are evaluated directly by the connected machine agent. Option D. Tags can be used to identify scope and support dynamic targeting for policy or extension deployment, but the tags do not perform the guest configuration action. The correct answer is D. Tags can be used to identify scope and support dynamic targeting for policy or extension deployment, but the tags do not perform the guest configuration action. Tags provide identification and can participate in dynamic scoping or queries, but the actual enforcement of guest configuration is performed by the assigned policy or extension, not by the tag values themselves. Exam clue: distinguish the organizational/identification function of tags from the actual enforcement mechanism provided by policy or extensions. Question 5. Choose 2 answers. A team has onboarded on-premises Windows Server machines to Azure Arc. It now wants standardized event collection and centrally governed operating system patching. Which 2 additional configurations are required to operationalize those capabilities? Choose 2. Option A. Deploy Azure Monitor Agent where supported and associate the intended data collection rule with the machines. Option B. Configure Azure Update Manager assessment or maintenance settings for the Arc-enabled machines. Option C. Enable every Arc extension in the subscription, so all capabilities share one configuration. Option D. Create a tag named managed equals true. The tag itself activates monitoring and patching. Option E. Install an automation account and log analytics workspace, because both are prerequisites for Azure Update Manager. The correct answer is A. Deploy Azure Monitor Agent where supported and associate the intended data collection rule with the machines. B. Configure Azure Update Manager assessment or maintenance settings for the Arc-enabled machines. Arc provides the control plane bridge, but monitoring and patching remain separate capabilities. AMA DCR Association governs selected telemetry. Update Manager has its own assessment and deployment configuration. Exam clue: Arc connection is the bridge, not completion of each service configuration. Question 6. Choose the best answer. A machine configuration assignment reports one Arc-enabled server as non-compliant with an expected registry setting. The engineer wants evidence at the policy control layer without changing scope or triggering remediation. Which action provides the most relevant evidence of what the assignment evaluated for that server? Option A. Open the machine configuration compliance detail for that server and inspect the evaluated setting and reason. Option B. Rerun remediation at subscription scope. Option C. Install every available Arc extension on the server. Option D. Add a tag and infer the registry value from tag compliance. The correct answer is A. Open the machine configuration compliance detail for that server and inspect the evaluated setting and reason. Per resource machine configuration compliance detail is the relevant evidence for the assignment evaluation. It does not claim to be a raw forensic registry read and does not mutate the machine. Exam clue. Match the evidence source to the control being evaluated. Do not confuse compliance detail with a raw local read. Question 7. Choose the best answer. A team must deploy the supported Microsoft anti-malware extension to selected Arc-enabled Windows Server machines. Its custom role currently grants only read access to the Arc machine resources. What is the least privilege correction? Option A. Grant contributor at subscription scope. Option B. Add the hybrid compute machine extension read and write permissions at the resource group scope containing the selected machines. Option C. Run the original onboarding script again because onboarding grants extension write permission. Option D. Apply a tag that authorizes the extension deployment. The correct answer is B. Add the hybrid compute machine extension read and write permissions at the resource group scope containing the selected machines. Arc VM extensions are separate resources. Deployment requires machine read plus extension read-write permissions. These can be scoped to the resource group instead of granting broad subscription rights. Exam clue. For an Arc extension, identify the extension resource permissions and grant them at the smallest required scope. Question 8. Choose the best answer. A team manages 60 Arc-enabled Windows Server 2019 machines across 3 regions. They must obtain a weekly update compliance report and apply critical and security updates on a recurring schedule without creating an automation account or log analytics workspace. The existing Azure subscription already contains the Arc machines and an Update Manager instance. Which single capability satisfies both the assessment and scheduled installation requirements under the current constraints? Option A. Azure Automation Update Management with a hybrid runbook worker on each machine. Option B. Windows Server Update Services, WSUS, with group policy targeting the Arc machines. Option C. Azure Update Manager with maintenance configurations targeting the Arc machines. Option D. Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager with Arc integration packs. The correct answer is C. Azure Update Manager with maintenance configurations targeting the Arc machines. CLM 005 states that Azure Update Manager provides update assessment and scheduled or on-demand patching for Arc-enabled servers without depending on an automation account or log analytics workspace. Exam clue. When the requirement explicitly excludes automation accounts and log analytics, the native Update Manager path for Arc machines is the only matching mechanism. Question 9. Choose the best answer. An administrator runs an on-demand assessment in Azure Update Manager against 15 Arc-enabled machines. The report shows 47 missing updates across the fleet. The team must now install only the critical and security updates during the next maintenance window, while leaving feature updates untouched. Which single control ensures that only the intended update classifications are installed during the maintenance window? Option A. Approve each missing update individually in the Update Manager console before the window. Option B. Run the assessment again immediately before the window and manually select the required updates. Option C. Deploy an Azure Policy guest configuration that blocks installation of any non-critical update. Option D. Create a maintenance configuration that specifies the critical and security classifications and the desired schedule. The correct answer is D. Create a maintenance configuration that specifies the critical and security classifications and the desired schedule. CLM 006 states that periodic assessment identifies update compliance while a maintenance configuration or on-demand deployment controls installation. Assessment is not remediation. The maintenance configuration is the mechanism that filters classifications and timing. Exam clue. Assessment produces the compliance list. Only the maintenance configuration object translates that list into controlled installation with classification filters. Question 10. Choose two answers. A company already uses an Azure Update Manager dynamic scope to select Arc-enabled production servers. It now needs a recurring patch schedule that limits installed updates and controls restart timing. Which two settings belong in the scheduled update design? Choose two. Option A, an Azure Automation account for update assessment. Option B, a subscription owner assignment for the patch operator. Option C, a maintenance window and reboot setting appropriate to the workload. Option D, update inclusion or exclusion criteria such as classifications or specific KB packages. Option E, a DCR that sends Windows event logs to the maintenance configuration. The correct answer is C, a maintenance window and reboot setting appropriate to the workload. D, update inclusion or exclusion criteria, such as classifications or specific KB packages. Dynamic scope selects eligible machines. The maintenance configuration separately defines timing and the update selection criteria. Restart behavior must also be set for the workload. Exam clue. Keep machine selection, schedule timing, reboot behavior, and update criteria as distinct controls. Question 11. Choose the best answer. A team needs to run an existing PowerShell maintenance script locally on Arc-enabled Windows Server machines on a schedule and retain centralized job output. General orchestration, not update assessment, is the requirement. An automation account is allowed, but no log analytics workspace should be introduced solely for this task. Which mechanism fits the requirement? Option A. Schedule an Azure Automation runbook that executes through an extension-based hybrid runbook worker on the target machines. Option B. Use an Update Manager maintenance configuration to treat the arbitrary script as an operating system update. Option C. Create an Azure Monitor DCR containing the PowerShell commands. Option D. Create a recurring Windows Admin Center calendar event. The correct answer is A. Schedule an Azure Automation runbook that executes through an extension-based hybrid runbook worker on the target machines. Azure Automation runbooks provide general orchestration, and an extension-based hybrid runbook worker executes the runbook locally on the machine. This is distinct from Azure Update Manager patch governance. Exam clue. Choose automation plus a hybrid runbook worker for arbitrary local orchestration. Choose Update Manager for OS patch governance. Question 12. Choose the best answer. An organization is retiring its legacy automation update management solution. It needs current update compliance assessment, plus on-demand and scheduled patching for Azure VMs and Arc-enabled servers. And it must not recreate the old automation account and log analytics dependencies. Which replacement meets the requirement? Option A. Azure Automation Change Tracking and Inventory. Option B. Azure Update Manager. Option C. A DCR that collects Windows Update event logs. Option D. A Windows Admin Center gateway with manual update installation. The correct answer is B. Azure Update Manager. Azure Update Manager is the current unified service for assessment and patch deployment across Azure and Arc-enabled servers, and has no dependency on Azure Automation or log analytics. Exam clue. When a question contrasts legacy automation update management with the current service, identify Azure Update Manager and its independent architecture. Question 13. Choose the best answer. A security architect is standardizing configuration on a new set of Windows Server 2025 domain controllers and member servers. The organization wants to apply role-specific security baselines, domain controller versus member server, with automatic drift detection and remediation where supported. Which built-in capability on Windows Server 2025 provides role-aware scenario application and drift control without requiring custom scripts or external policy engines? Option A, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Recommendations applied through Azure Policy Guest Configuration. Option B, Windows Security Baseline GPOs imported from the Security Compliance Toolkit. Option C, OS config with supported security scenarios and drift control features. Option D, Azure Auto-Manage Machine Best Practices Profiles. The correct answer is C, OS config with supported security scenarios and drift control features. CLM 009 states that on Windows Server 2025, OS config can apply supported role-aware security scenarios and use drift control. It must not be generalized to unsupported earlier server versions. Exam clue. When the requirement is native Windows Server 2025 role-aware baseline application plus drift control, select the OS config capability rather than GPO, policy recommendations, or excluded legacy services. Question 14. Choose the best answer. An organization has Microsoft Entra joined, Hybrid joined, and Windows Server Active Directory joined devices. It must configure Windows Lapse password backup according to each join state. Which behavior is supported? Option A. Hybrid joined devices back up the same managed password to both Microsoft Entra ID and Active Directory. Option B. All devices attempt both directories and use whichever accepts the write first. Option C. Microsoft Entra joined devices can back up passwords only to Windows Server Active Directory. Option D. Hybrid joined devices can be configured to use either Microsoft Entra ID or Active Directory as the backup directory, but not both simultaneously. Single directory join states use their matching directory. The correct answer is D. Hybrid joined devices can be configured to use either Microsoft Entra ID or Active Directory as the backup directory, but not both simultaneously. Single directory join states use their matching directory. Windows Lapse backup destination follows join state. Hybrid joined devices can choose either supported directory through policy, but cannot back up the password to both. Exam clue. Join state constrains the backup directory. Hybrid join adds a choice, not dual backup. Question 15. Choose two answers. A domain administrator plans to enable Windows Lapse management of DSRM passwords on Windows Server 2022 domain controllers. Which two platform constraints must be satisfied? Choose two. Option A. The domain functional level must be Windows Server 2016 or later. Option B. Every domain controller in the domain must run Windows Server 2022. Option C. The participating domain controllers must run Windows Server 2019 or later. Option D. A log analytics workspace must store the encrypted DSRM passwords. Option E. The domain must use Microsoft Entra Domain Services rather than ADDS. The correct answer is A. The domain functional level must be Windows Server 2016 or later. C. The participating domain controllers must run Windows Server 2019 or later. Windows Lapse DSRM management requires a 2016 or later domain functional level and is supported on Windows Server 2019 or later domain controllers. Older supported domain controllers may coexist, but cannot use the DSRM feature. Exam clue. For Lapse DSRM questions, pair the 2016 plus DFL requirement with the 2019 plus participating DC requirement. Question 16. Choose the best answer. A security team reviews Defender for Server's posture for 40 ARC-enabled Windows Server machines. The dashboard shows a recommendation to enable a specific inbound firewall rule on 22 machines, but no policy assignment or remediation task has been created yet. What does the presence of the recommendation provide as evidence? Option A. The 22 machines currently fail the posture check that generated the recommendation. Option B. The recommended firewall rule is already enforced on the 22 machines. Option C. A Defender for Servers policy has already been assigned and is actively remediating the rule. Option D. The recommendation can be used directly as the source of truth for an Azure Policy guest configuration assignment. The correct answer is A. The 22 machines currently fail the posture check that generated the recommendation. A recommendation surfaces a detected posture gap from the assessment. It indicates the current state failed the check, but does not prove enforcement or remediation has occurred. Exam clue: separate the detection of a posture gap, recommendation, from proof that remediation or enforcement has taken place. Question 17. Choose the best answer. An organization must ensure that management traffic between specific management workstations and Arc-enabled Windows Server machines is authenticated and encrypted. Local firewall exceptions have produced inconsistent results across the fleet. Which Windows firewall capability provides centrally manageable IPsec-based authentication and encryption for the required traffic? Option A. Inbound allow rules that reference only source IP addresses and TCP ports. Option B. Connection security rules that define authentication requirements and encryption algorithms. Option C. Windows Defender Firewall with advanced security default profiles applied through group policy. Option D. SMB signing enforcement on the file server role. The correct answer is B. Connection security rules that define authentication requirements and encryption algorithms. Connection security rules establish IPsec requirements for authentication and encryption. They operate independently of simple port-based allow rules and can be managed centrally to reduce local exceptions. Exam clue: match the requirement for authentication plus encryption with the IPsec capability of connection security rules rather than port-based allow rules. Question 18. Choose the best answer. A Windows Server 2025 machine is managed locally with PowerShell and centrally with Azure Policy. The same OS config scenario receives conflicting desired values from the two authorities. Which authority has precedence for the Arc-connected machine under the documented OS config model? Option A. Windows Admin Center, because it was used most recently. Option B. Local PowerShell, because local configuration always overrides cloud configuration. Option C. Azure Policy as the cloud authority. Option D. Whichever authority has drift control disabled. The correct answer is C. Azure Policy as the cloud authority. For cloud or Arc-connected resources, OSConfig documents cloud authority through Azure Policy, ahead of local Windows Admin Center or PowerShell authority. The precedence model makes conflicting configuration deterministic. Exam clue: when OS config authorities conflict on an Arc-connected server, use the documented cloud before local precedence order. Question 19. Choose the best answer. A hybrid joined Windows server is configured to back up its Windows Labs password to Active Directory. An administrator changes the Microsoft Entra policy to use Entra ID instead, but the existing group policy remains configured for Active Directory. What should the administrator do before treating the new destination as authoritative? Option A. Leave both policies enabled because Windows Labs writes the same password to both directories. Option B. Delete the local administrator account so Windows Labs creates a replacement automatically. Option C. Install legacy Microsoft Labs to coordinate both backup directories. Option D. Remove or reconcile the conflicting policy so one backup directory is selected, then verify a successful Labs processing event and password record in that directory. The correct answer is D. Remove or reconcile the conflicting policy so one backup directory is selected, then verify a successful Labs processing event and password record in that directory. A hybrid join device can use either directory, but not both simultaneously. Policy conflicts must be resolved, and successful processing must be verified in the selected destination. Exam clue: a hybrid join adds destination choice, governance requires one policy authority, and evidence in the selected directory. Question 20. Choose two answers. A team must grant routine, day-to-day administration rights for user accounts and group membership changes within a specific organizational unit. The requirement is to avoid adding any user to domain admins, enterprise admins, or account operators. Which two delegation practices satisfy the requirement while following least privilege principles? Choose two. Option A. Add the operators to the account operators group so they inherit broad rights across the domain. Option B. Delegate the required permissions directly on the target OU using the delegation of control wizard or equivalent PowerShell commandlets. Option C. Grant the operators membership in domain admins only during the hours when administration tasks are performed. Option D. Create a custom security group, grant the minimal set of permissions on the OU, and add the operators to that group. Option E. Use a group policy restricted group setting to place the operators into a privileged built-in group temporarily. The correct answer is B. Delegate the required permissions directly on the target OU using the delegation of control wizard or equivalent PowerShell commandlets. D. Create a custom security group, grant the minimal set of permissions on the OU, and add the operators to that group. Routine administration should be delegated at the smallest appropriate OU boundary. Either direct delegation or a purpose-built custom group with only the required permissions meets the least privilege constraint without membership in highly privileged forest or domain groups. Exam clue: when the constraint explicitly prohibits membership in domain admins, enterprise admins, or account operators, select delegation at the OU level or a minimal custom group. Question 21. Choose the best answer. A web application runs on 4 Windows Server 2022 member servers in the same domain. The current design uses a single domain user account with a manually managed password for the application service on all 4 servers. The team must reduce password sprawl while keeping the service operational across the servers. Which account type provides centralized password management and supports the multi-server service requirement without interactive credentials? Option A. A group managed service account, gMSA, that the domain manages and that the service on each server can use after the appropriate permissions are granted. Option B. A standard domain user account whose password is stored in a group policy preference. Option C. A local user account created identically on each of the 4 servers. Option D. A computer account for each server used as the service identity. The correct answer is A. A group managed service account, gMSA, that the domain manages and that the service on each server can use after the appropriate permissions are granted. A gMSA centralizes password management in Active Directory and supports services that run on multiple servers when the required permissions and host restrictions are configured. Exam clue: when the requirement is centralized password lifecycle plus support for the same service identity on multiple servers, select the gMSA mechanism. Question 22. Choose the best answer. An administrator must allow a help desk team to run a limited set of PowerShell commands on domain join servers for routine maintenance. The current remote management uses WinRM with the default endpoint and a shared administrative account. Which configuration change introduces the narrowest command surface and identity constraint for the required tasks? Option A. Enable WinRM on every server and add the help desk users to the local administrators group. Option B. Deploy a just enough administration (JEA) endpoint that registers a role capability file limiting the allowed commandlets and that runs under a virtual or gMSA identity. Option C. Place the help desk users in the domain admins group so they can remote into any server. Option D. Configure protected users membership for the help desk accounts and rely on that group membership to restrict remote PowerShell. The correct answer is B. Deploy a just enough administration (JEA) endpoint that registers a role capability file limiting the allowed commandlets and that runs under a virtual or gMSA identity. JEA defines a constrained remoting endpoint, allowed commands, and execution identity independent of broad group membership. Enabling WinRM alone does not enforce these limits. Exam clue. When the goal is to constrain both the command surface and the execution identity for remoting, JEA is the mechanism that satisfies both constraints. Question 23. Choose the best answer. Several scheduled task service accounts are members of privileged groups. A reviewer proposes adding them to protected users as the complete fix. What is the correct governance conclusion? Option A. Protected users automatically converts the accounts to gMSAs and removes their privileged memberships. Option B. Protected users proves least privilege because NTLM is restricted. Option C. Protected users changes credential behavior and can break service scenarios. Compatibility must be evaluated, while service identity and delegated rights still require separate redesign. Option D. Protected users extends Kerberos ticket lifetime, so unattended services remain signed in. The correct answer is C. Protected users changes credential behavior and can break service scenarios. Compatibility must be evaluated, while service identity and delegated rights still require separate redesign. Protected users hardens credential use, but is not an account lifecycle or delegation solution. Service accounts can be incompatible with its restrictions, and excessive group rights still must be removed or redesigned. Exam clue. Do not use protected users as a substitute for gMSA design, rights reduction, or compatibility analysis. Question 24. Choose the best answer. A departmental help desk group may reset ordinary user passwords in one OU. It must not reset passwords for two executive accounts located in a protected child OU, and the delegation must remain easy to revoke. Which design meets the boundary? Option A. Grant reset password at the domain root and document the two exceptions. Option B. Add the help desk to account operators and deny access on the executive user objects. Option C. Grant temporary domain admin membership for each reset request. Option D. Delegate reset password to a dedicated group at the departmental OU. Block or redesign inheritance for the protected child OU as required, and keep the executives outside the delegated effective scope. The correct answer is D. Delegate reset password to a dedicated group at the departmental OU. Block or redesign inheritance for the protected child OU as required, and keep the executives outside the delegated effective scope. A dedicated group plus OU scoped delegation creates a revocable authority boundary. The protected child scope must be designed so the delegated permission is not effective there. Exam clue. Model delegated authority with OU scope and inheritance, not privileged group membership plus exceptions. Question 25. Choose two answers. A line of business application service runs on two Windows Server 2022 machines and requires both a service identity and occasional remote PowerShell maintenance. The design must avoid interactive credentials and broad administrative rights. Which two mechanisms together satisfy the service identity and constrained remoting requirements at the smallest scope? Choose two. Option A. A group managed service account, gMSA, configured as the service account with host restrictions limited to the two servers. Option B. A single domain user account added to the local administrators group on both servers. Option C. Membership of the service account in the domain admins group to simplify remote access. Option D. A custom security group granted reset password rights on the entire domain. Option E. A just enough administration (JEA) endpoint registered on the servers that exposes only the maintenance commandlets and executes under a virtual account or the gMSA. The correct answer is A, a group managed service account (gMSA) configured as the service account with host restrictions limited to the 2 servers. E, a just enough administration (JEA) endpoint registered on the servers that exposes only the maintenance commandlets and executes under a virtual account or the gMSA. The gMSA provides the centralized, non-interactive service identity scoped to the 2 hosts. JEA provides the constrained endpoint and command surface for maintenance without requiring broad group membership. Exam clue. Pair the gMSA for the service identity with JEA for the constrained maintenance surface when both requirements must be met at the smallest scope. Question 26. Choose the best answer. An engineer creates a DCR for Windows event logs and deploys AMA to 40 Arc-enabled Windows Server machines. No target machine has a data collection rule association, and no data arrives. What is required to activate the defined collection? Option A. Create a DCR association for each target machine, using policy or automation if scale requires it. Option B. Grant the DCR contributor at subscription scope. Option C. Run an Update Manager assessment to initialize AMA. Option D. Associate the DCR only with the Log Analytics workspace. The correct answer is A. Create a DCR association for each target machine, using policy or automation if scale requires it. For AMA VM collection, a DCRA links the DCR to each resource. Policy or automation can create those resource associations at scale. The existence of the DCR and AMA alone is insufficient. Exam clue. For AMA collection, check both the agent and the per-resource DCR association. Question 27. Choose the best answer. A team is replacing the legacy Log Analytics agent on Azure VMs and Arc-enabled Windows Server machines. It needs generally available Windows Event and Performance Counter collection into Log Analytics. Which design stays on the stable replacement path? Option A. Use Event Hub's ingestion through a DCR because every DCR scenario is generally available. Option B. Deploy AMA and use DCRs plus per-resource DCR associations for the required event and performance data sources and workspace destination. Option C. Keep the legacy agent indefinitely because DCRs support only Kubernetes resources. Option D. Use the Preview Platform Metrics export path to collect Windows guest events. The correct answer is B. Deploy AMA and use DCRs plus per-resource DCR associations for the required event and performance data sources and workspace destination. AMA with DCRs and DCRAs is the documented replacement for legacy VM data collection. Preview Event Hubs and Platform Metrics DCR scenarios are not required for this guest telemetry design. Exam clue. A DCR article can contain both GA and preview scenarios. Select only the GA VM/AMA path required by the stem. Question 28. Choose the best answer. An alert rule fires when the average CPU on several Arc-enabled servers exceeds 85% for 5 minutes. The on-call engineer must determine the next action that correctly interprets the alert without assuming causation. What does the alert definitively indicate, and which follow-up mechanism supplies the supporting evidence? Option A. The alert proves that a specific process caused the CPU spike. Open the Azure Monitor Logs query associated with the alert to see the root cause. Option B. The alert automatically remediates the condition by scaling the affected machines. No further investigation is required. Option C. The alert indicates that the defined signal condition evaluated true. Inspect VM insights or the DCR collected performance counters to correlate the workload. Option D. The alert replaces the need for any local event log review because Azure Monitor already contains every Windows event. The correct answer is C. The alert indicates that the defined signal condition evaluated true. Inspect VM insights or the DCR collected performance counters to correlate the workload. An alert rule evaluates a signal and can invoke an action group. The alert itself reports the condition result. Diagnosis requires correlation with the actual collected performance or log evidence. Exam clue: separate the alert, signal evaluation, from the evidence source, DCR collected counters or logs, and from any remediation action. Question 29. Choose the best answer. A team needs centrally retained Windows security events from 200 ARC-enabled servers and a short, high-resolution CPU baseline while diagnosing one server. Which evidence plan best matches those different scopes? Option A. Send every event and counter from every server to one alert rule with no retention design. Option B. Use Windows Admin Center alerts as the long-term security event archive and Azure Update Manager for CPU sampling. Option C. Rely on the local event log for retention and use a DCR only for patch history. Option D. Collect the required security event channels centrally through AMA/DCR into a log analytics workspace and run a bounded performance monitor data collector set on the one server for the diagnostic baseline. The correct answer is D. Collect the required security event channels centrally through AMA/DCR into a log analytics workspace and run a bounded performance monitor data collector set on the one server for the diagnostic baseline. Central DCR collection fits retained fleet evidence, while a bounded local data collector set can capture focused high-resolution diagnostic counters without expanding fleet ingestion. Exam clue: choose evidence tools by required scope, sampling detail, and retention, not by forcing every signal through one control. Question 30. Choose two answers. A restored ARC-enabled Windows server must resume collection of specified security log events through AMA. The DCR already defines the event channel and log analytics destination. Which two facts must be verified before claiming collection is operational? Choose two. Option A. The ARC resource exists, even if no monitoring extension is healthy. Option B. The Azure Monitor agent is installed and healthy on the restored server. Option C. A DCR association links the restored server resource to the intended DCR. Option D. An unrelated CPU alert rule is enabled. Option E. Update Manager reports no missing updates. The correct answer is B. The Azure Monitor agent is installed and healthy on the restored server. C. A DCR association links the restored server resource to the intended DCR. The DCR defines collection, but AMA performs collection, and the DCRA links the resource to the rule. ARC existence, alerting, and update state do not establish the telemetry path. Exam clue: for a restored AMA monitored server, prove the agent and the DCR association, not merely the ARC resource. Question 31. Choose the best answer. Two data centers are connected by a low latency link that satisfies storage replica synchronous replication requirements. A critical volume requires zero data loss for committed writes if the primary site fails. Which storage replica mode meets the RPO? Option A. Synchronous replication because write completion is coordinated with the destination. Option B. Asynchronous replication because local write acknowledgement guarantees zero loss. Option C. Asynchronous replication plus a 15-minute snapshot schedule. Option D. DFS replication with immediate polling. The correct answer is A, synchronous replication, because write completion is coordinated with the destination. Synchronous storage replica is the mode aligned to zero data loss for committed writes when its network requirements are met. Asynchronous replication can have a non-zero RPO. Exam clue: zero loss RPO plus a qualifying low latency link points to synchronous storage replica. Question 32. Choose the best answer. A storage administrator configures storage replica between two clusters to protect a 4 terabyte volume. After initial synchronization completes, a user accidentally deletes 200 gigabytes of project files on the source volume. The replication partnership remains healthy. Which statement correctly describes the recoverability posture after the deletion? Option A, the files remain available on the destination volume because storage replica preserves point-in-time copies. Option B, the deletion is replicated to the destination. An independent backup taken before the deletion is required for recovery. Option C, storage replica automatically maintains VSS snapshots on the destination that can be used for file-level restore. Option D, failover to the destination cluster restores the files because the partnership is still healthy. The correct answer is B. The deletion is replicated to the destination. An independent backup taken before the deletion is required for recovery. Storage replica performs block-level replication of all changes, including deletions. Once the deletion is committed on the source, it is mirrored to the destination. The technology provides crash-consistent replicas, but does not replace point-in-time backup or snapshot retention policies. Exam clue: replication of every block change means deletions travel with the data. Recoverability therefore depends on an independent mechanism that retains historical versions. Question 33. Choose the best answer. Azure File Sync is deployed with cloud tiering enabled across 12 branch offices. The sync status for all endpoints shows healthy, and the last successful sync occurred 12 minutes ago. A ransomware incident encrypts files on one branch server. Which additional control must be verified to confirm that files can be recovered to a clean state with a defined recovery point? Option A. The cloud endpoint retains non-tiered versions of the encrypted files in Azure Files. Option B. Cloud tiering is paused and all files are recalled to the affected server before restore. Option C. An Azure backup policy protects the Azure file share and the recovery point objective matches the required RPO. Option D. The file sync group uses a single namespace so that the healthy endpoints can serve as the recovery source. The correct answer is C. An Azure backup policy protects the Azure file share, and the recovery point objective matches the required RPO. Successful synchronization proves only that the current namespace state is consistent. It does not protect against ransomware that encrypts files after the last sync. Azure backup of the Azure file share supplies independent, versioned recovery points that can be restored without relying on the now compromised on-premises copies. Exam clue: Sync Health confirms replication currency, not the existence of an independent, restorable recovery point. Backup scope and retention must be validated separately. Question 34. Choose the best answer. A file server must allow Windows 11 clients on the public internet to access shares securely without exposing TCP 445. The same server must also support RDMA-capable clients inside the data center that require the lowest possible latency for large sequential transfers. Which feature pairing satisfies the two distinct requirements? Option A. SMB encryption for all traffic. SMB multi-channel for parallel transfers. Option B. SMB over QUIC for both internet and RDMA traffic. Option C. SMB direct for internet clients, SMB signing for RDMA clients. Option D. SMB over QUIC for internet clients, SMB direct for RDMA clients. The correct answer is D. SMB over QUIC for internet clients, SMB direct for RDMA clients. SMB over Quick provides a TLS 1.3 encrypted UDP 443 tunnel that survives NAT and does not require inbound TCP 445, satisfying the internet requirement. SMB Direct, RDMA, operates over Rocky, iWarp, or InfiniBand inside the data center to achieve the lowest latency for large transfers. These features address distinct transport and security problems and are not interchangeable. Exam clue: map each requirement, internet reachability without TCP 445 versus RDMA low latency, to the distinct SMB capability that was designed for it. Question 35. Choose two answers. A Tier 1 Hyper-V VM must survive a host site outage and also recover a point-in-time version after accidental deletion inside the guest. The organization requires two independent protection mechanisms. Which two mechanisms satisfy the distinct replication and historical recovery requirements? Choose two. Option A: a production checkpoint kept indefinitely as the backup strategy. Option B: failover clustering without an independent backup. Option C: Hyper-V replica alone because the replica preserves deleted guest files as historical versions. Option D: Hyper-V replica to a recovery host or site. Option E: a supported VM backup policy with retained recovery points and verified restore procedures. The correct answer is D: Hyper-V replica to a recovery host or site. E: a supported VM backup policy with retained recovery points and verified restore procedures. Hyper-V Replica provides asynchronous VM replication for outage recovery. A separate backup with retained recovery points provides historical recovery after logical deletion. Replication alone can reproduce the deletion. Exam clue: pair one availability or replication mechanism with one independent point-in-time backup mechanism when the stem names both failure classes. Question 36. Choose the best answer. Two Windows Server sites replicate a critical data volume with storage replica. The business requires zero data loss for committed writes. The measured inter-site latency and bandwidth satisfy synchronous replication requirements. Which replication design aligns with the stated RPO? Option A: synchronous replication, because the write is acknowledged only after both sites receive it, subject to the documented network requirements. Option B: asynchronous replication, because it acknowledges writes locally before sending them and therefore guarantees zero data loss. Option C: DFS replication, because it provides block-level synchronous protection for an open data volume. Option D: a daily VSS snapshot copied to the second site, because snapshots guarantee zero RPO between copies. The correct answer is A: synchronous replication, because the write is acknowledged only after both sites receive it, subject to the documented network requirements. Synchronous storage replica coordinates write completion across the source and destination and is the mode aligned to zero data loss when latency and bandwidth requirements are met. Asynchronous mode can lose writes not yet replicated. Exam clue: select storage replica mode from the RPO and measured link characteristics. Zero committed write loss points to synchronous replication. Question 37. Choose the best answer. An organization maintains weekly full backups and daily incremental backups of domain controllers. A recent ransomware incident encrypted multiple sysvol contents and several group policy objects. The documented RPO is 24 hours, and RTO is 4 hours for directory services. Which backup attribute set must be verified before declaring the backup sufficient to meet the stated recovery objectives? Option A: successful backup job completion logs for the past 30 days. Option B: retention period, protected scope, including sysvol and GPOs, credential isolation, dependency mapping, and documented restore procedures that achieve the RPO RTO. Option C: presence of a recent system state backup and membership of the backup operator in enterprise admins. Option D: daily incremental size growth trending below 5% and off-site tape rotation every 90 days. The correct answer is B. Retention period, protected scope, including sysvol and GPOs, credential isolation, dependency mapping, and documented restore procedures that achieve the RPO and RTO. A backup is operationally useful only when retention, protected scope, credentials, dependencies, and restore procedures match the required RPO and RTO, CLM 027. Job success logs alone do not confirm these attributes. Exam clue: focus on the explicit requirement that retention, scope, credentials, dependencies, and procedures must align with stated RPO/RTO. Question 38. Choose the best answer. An administrator accidentally deletes one user object. AD recycle bin was enabled before the deletion, and the rest of the directory, sysvol, and domain controllers are healthy. Which recovery action uses the smallest appropriate scope? Option A. Perform a full forest recovery. Option B. Boot a domain controller into DSRM and authoritatively restore the entire AD database. Option C. Restore the deleted user from AD recycle bin. Option D. Mark sysvol authoritative and restart DFS replication. The correct answer is C. Restore the deleted user from AD recycle bin. AD recycle bin is designed for object-level recovery when it was enabled before deletion. DSRM, sysvol recovery, and forest recovery address broader failure scopes. Exam clue: match the recovery tool to the failed object boundary. One deleted AD object points to recycle bin, not database or forest recovery. Question 39. Choose the best answer. A clustered file service uses storage spaces direct mirroring across nodes. A faulty administrative script deletes business files, and the deletion is reflected throughout the clustered storage. Which conclusion correctly describes the continuity gap? Option A. Mirroring guarantees an independent historical copy because every write is stored on multiple disks. Option B. Failover clustering automatically converts mirrored data into immutable restore points. Option C. Storage spaces direct prevents administrative deletions from propagating between storage copies. Option D. The cluster can remain available through component failures, but mirrored availability does not provide an independent point-in-time backup for logical deletion recovery. The correct answer is D. The cluster can remain available through component failures, but mirrored availability does not provide an independent point-in-time backup for logical deletion recovery. Mirroring and clustering protect availability against selected hardware or node failures. They preserve current state, including logical deletion, so an independent backup and restore design is still required. Exam clue: high availability protects service continuity. Backup protects recoverable history. Do not substitute one for the other. Question 40. Choose two answers. Before approving an ADDS recovery runbook, an organization must prove that a restored domain controller meets its RTO without exposing production credentials or allowing the test environment to contact production. Which two controls provide the required validation? Choose two. Option A. Accept the backup console completed status as proof that ADDS will start and authenticate users. Option B. Restore directly onto an active production domain controller so the test uses real clients. Option C. Perform the restore in an isolated network with no production routes and test-only credentials, or appropriately controlled recovered credentials. Option D. Skip functional test to avoid changing the restored database. Option E. Verify in the isolated environment that ADDS starts, required DNS records resolve, sysvol and net logon are shared, and test authentication succeeds within the RTO. The correct answer is C. Perform the restore in an isolated network with no production routes and test only credentials, or appropriately controlled recovered credentials. E. Verify in the isolated environment that ADDS starts, required DNS records resolve, sysvol and netlogon are shared, and test authentication succeeds within the RTO. Isolation protects the production authority boundary. Functional checks within the required time prove that directory, DNS, sysvol, and authentication services actually recover. Job status alone proves only backup execution. Exam clue. Recovery approval requires both isolation and service-level functional evidence, not only a successful backup job. Review any misses by mechanism, scope, evidence, and verification. Use the explanations and exam clues to strengthen your decision process. You have completed AZ-802 Practice Exam Set 10. Thank you for studying with WebLizard's Cert Lab.